Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Hard Corner with your hosts, Dale and Eric. In this episode, we want to understand what resonated so much about this topic that you said to yourselves, hey, we're going to retire, but we're going to keep on working. As a matter of fact, we're going to retire and work exactly on this stuff. So what happened? How and why did you get into this business?
So back in 2016, Eric and I attended a school. We thought we were going to Las Vegas for 5 days and going to Mercury, Nevada for 1 day for a range day, so to speak, on the test range. So we thought we'd have a good time, right? You know, Nevada, police department's paying for it. Las Vegas, have a great time. Well, we get there and they had changed the script on us because the recent classes, the attendees were showing up to class inebriated and or not showing up at all. So they decided you're going to go to the test site for the whole time. So it's an old military barracks. If you look up Mercury, Nevada, you'll understand what we're talking about. Some pretty famous tests back in the 40s and 50s. So there's nothing to do there. Literally, you cannot have your phone outside of your dorm room, which is a World War II style barracks. So all you can do is pretty much eat, work out, get a little lift in, and go to class.
The food was pretty good though, bro.
Food was good.
Food was good.
And the bar was nice too.
And they had some good drinks.
The bar was nice.
Drinks.
So it's 2016. I'd been on the police department 16 years. Eric, I believe 14. And you have a lot of time to talk because there's not a lot of stuff to do, right? They had one TV in the day room. There's not even TVs in your dorm room. You couldn't take, iPads or anything. So it was very restrictive in the nature. So we're just talking one night about like our lifestyle before on the SWAT team, how much that takes away from your family. At that point, I had almost a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. Eric's kids were younger than mine. But we talked about like, what could we do post-police career? So most police officers die within 5 years of retiring. That's just a stat that's real because they do not find purpose in life. You have this thing that you do for so long, it becomes such a part of you for better or for worse, probably for worse, and then you don't have purpose. Eric's like, let's start a training company. I'm like, no, not at all. I thought he meant just training police. So training police, and especially SWAT team guys, is the hardest thing to do.
Why
Do you agree?
Why is that, Dale?
Because they all know everything. They're all experts.
Sure.
You can't say anything to them that they already don't know. And Eric's like, no, I've got another idea. Let's spawn this into something that we can share with civilians. So over the years, we've got all this training, all this experience, responding to real events. We'll talk about that later in future episodes about what we've done and what we've experienced. He's like, let's start something that we can teach civilians. And I was like, man, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about it. That's 2016. Life happens, and we started to kind of get some momentum, trying to start to build what we were doing. 2019 is when we actually really got serious about it. Then, of course, COVID happened in 2020. That shut everything down, especially for in-person training. So we evolved. We've developed videos, interactive training. But over the course of the last 6 years, we've developed a system that Eric's going to discuss in further detail that we want to give information to civilians that they're not privy to, because there's also a lot of stuff that happens in the response of first responders that they have no idea about. Like, so they may think if I'm involved in an event and something happens, the officer will do this. That's not the case. So the difference between our training and everyone else's is when we train civilians, whether it be a nonprofit, which we do a lot of, schools or industry, we train you on how to survive. Then we train you on how to react when the police get there, because that's the biggest missing piece of all this, is that people don't know what is the immediate aftermath after an incident.
Yeah. So first off, I just want to kind of start off with, we use the word civilians because in the police world, that's how we describe non-law enforcement people, right? So if you're not a sworn law enforcement officer, we refer to the word as civilian. It doesn't mean disrespect or it's not to be condescending. It's just the word that we use. So when we decided to do this training company and we wanted to focus most of our time on the non-law enforcement, world, the civilian part of it, because most of the training companies actually give training to law enforcement or military. So we're like, man, what can we do, to really give people the education and the empowerment to do something with this? Because most of the active shooter incidents, that's kind of what we focus on, is active shooter, active aggressor response. They go after non-law enforcement. Like, you don't really hear about them going to the police department. or, the donut shop, things like
Donuts,
that to
gas
go,
station.
gas stations where, we get the big gulps.
Soft targets is what
So-
they target.
Most of these active shooters are what we call cowards. Honestly, they go after people who aren't prepared, who aren't protecting themselves. So we wanted to be able to empower people to have some knowledge on what to do. So if you look back in the early 2000s, the federal government came out with a program. It was called Run, Hide, Fight. Right. So it's a good program. It was the first of its kind. It was a good starting point to get people up to speed on what they should do in case of an active aggressor, active shooter incident. So I'm gonna kind of nerd out on you a little bit. This is the part that I love.
Nerds.
Started doing some deep diving on this, kind of diving into understanding human dynamics and decision making and why people do what they do. That was one of the things that we did in SWAT was why do people do things under stress? So what we found was that the human mind learns in patterns. And the most simple pattern that a human mind learns, the first basic pattern is 3. So when you think about it, when you're a kid, you learn about the 3 little pigs, the 3 blind mice, the 3 musketeers. In baseball, it's 3 strikes and you're out. Field goals in football are 3 points, and the best shot you could take in basketball is 3 points.
Stoplights, things like that.
Stoplights, the American flag. We can go on and on and on about the pattern of 3 in the human mind. And so the human mind seeks that pattern. So Run, Hide, Fight was great, right? It fit that pattern. But we took it a step further. We looked up and we found out, according to, different resources, it says that the human mind and the letter 3 are the most,
Letter E.
the letter E. The letter E is the most used letter in the alphabet.
And also, I would say this too, real quick, not to cut you off, but we find E is soothing. Run, hide, fight is very panic inducing because it's very linear in nature. There's a famous video. If you can't run, then you got to hide. If you can't hide, you got to fight. Our system is completely different because you don't know what's going to happen to you that day in the situation. So we wanted to create something that was more allowed for variance and also wasn't so panic inducing.
Yeah. So
Eric, let me jump in here. You
Go ahead, man.
got tripped up over 3.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I use a 3 as an E in my gamer tag. A little bit of a gamer, but yeah, you get it. All right. So, but I'm just trying to go back to the how and the why. So, if I'm understanding you right, how you showed up at this training, you realize you've got all this knowledge. We should be able to share this with people, and you found challenges in being able to do that. Are you saying that you weren't able to do this until you retired?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, as you're a normal, let's say, civilian in everyday life, there's not really a school you can sign up for, or there's not a lot of opportunities. So we wanted to provide that opportunity. So we were still police working full time when we came up with this idea. And as you can, probably attest, starting a business is a pretty scary thing to do, right? We walked away from a career that was structured. I got a paycheck. I had insurance and everything ready to go. But retirement, what's awesome about being a police retiree is that I get a pension, right? So I get the pension, I get the medical program. So it gave us the freedom to be able to dive into this both feet and not really worry about, falling through. We had a safety net, so to speak. So we really wanted to be able to start this business from the ground up, provide an opportunity for people to get educated and have a good time doing it. So we know it's a dark topic. We know it's kind of negative, but people don't really understand the empowerment and the positive energy we put into it.
And Brent, I'll add this too. So I was the active aggressor coordinator for our department. And the requests got there were so many requests that we couldn't fulfill them. So finally the department said, look, if someone calls and requests an active aggressor training, what we would always do is send the newest SWAT guy. And quite frankly, the training was BS. It wasn't great. It was just to send the newest guy. Here's this basic slide deck, and here's what you're going to do.
Just some scare tactics, things like that.
But the requests got so many that they decided, hey, we can no longer provide free training for for-profit companies because companies were coming at the department and asking for like large-scale exercises. Like, and the manpower at that point was so depleted, we couldn't do our main mission and fulfill what they said. So kind of like Eric's thought about it and his idea in conjunction with what we knew was going on in policing in that time frame, 2019, from 2017 to 2020, really, frankly, that we saw that there was a vacuum that where this could really be used at, right? And it's because you can't expect the police department to keep on sending people out on duty when they don't have the bodies to even fill what their spots they got on the street. So that was the second piece to it as well. It was his idea and the proper timing with how policing was going in that time.
Okay, so just make sure I'm tracking with you. You're talking ABC companies calling the police department non-emergency line saying, "Hey, can you guys come and train us?"
They used to send us out there to train them, yes, on duty.
Yep.
I mean, I can only imagine that as events and the number of events like what we see in the news continues to increase, those calls and those requests for more training naturally would continue to increase. So is this something that all law enforcement departments across the country deal with?
Yeah, in a way. So you got to understand this too. Response to active aggressor or active shooter across the country is not a standard. There's no regulation. There's no law. There's no policy that says all agencies will do A, B, and C, right? So every agency kind of does what we call national best practice. They look around and see who's doing the best and they kind of replicate that. So not everybody does the same thing. There's not a standard. And so we wanted to be able the ones to create a standard, right? And that basic standard, in which I kind of want to re-clarify because I messed it up earlier, was the letter E is the most common letter used in the alphabet, and the pattern of 3 is how human minds learn information. So we wanted to put that information together, but we also wanted to be able to deliver it in an enthusiastic, empowering, educational way that people walk away with confidence.
For sure. And I'll say this too real quick. It's escape, evade, engage. I think at this point in this podcast, we can probably just focus on what we're talking about and do a new one where we actually break that down in bigger detail.
Yeah.
But so the how and the why are very important. The last thing that I'll say is this is like, so we also train in a lot of schools, right? So like where I live at, it's a small county. Eric and I are still, we're seasonal.
I call us part-time seasonal temporary police officers.
So we're still sworn police officers in the state of Kentucky. We do still train law enforcement. That's a smaller piece of our pie, so to speak. But it's so important to us in these communities where people don't understand because they think they're not vulnerable because they're not the big city, right? So it's so important to us to get our information and our message out to people because this stuff happens everywhere. I mean, Columbine woke up the police mindset back in 1999. But 10 years before that, we had an active shooter here in Louisville, Kentucky at Standard Revere that no one remembers. So
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, you're one of few. You're one of few. I mean, because what was it called before it was called an active aggressor? Do you remember?
Active aggressor. Something
Before,
about,
no offense to anybody, but it was called going postal.
Remember that?
yeah, going postal.
Going postal.
And then
Yeah.
the demographics are changing. Everything's changing. But I guess my main piece in this is just the importance of getting the information out to the masses, because a lot of times what's happened in the past as far as the civilian world goes, which Eric explained civilian very good earlier, the non-police, non-military world, they'll do training like this just to check a box, right? It's just that I'm going to check this box, watch this 5-minute video so I can meet whatever standard my company has for me. But that training's not impactful, right? The companies that hire us are people that actually want to actually invest in their employees. And that's one of the biggest things we tell people when we train them is like, your company's made an investment because they brought us out to a company, like you said, ABC in this state, and they're actually invested in what, your safety, because whatever we teach in the classroom, it goes wherever you are. It doesn't stay at your place of work. It goes to the mall, the movie theater, you name it.
Yeah,
And it's
just
very
like we talked
simple.
about the,
We keep it really simple and direct.
yeah, just like we talked about the Derby in our previous episode, now to get a better understanding of what put you in the situation to where this even became an idea, the how your business came to be and how we got to the point where we can have all these discussions. And then we talk about the why. I never, I want to know this stuff. I think there's a lot of other people out there that do too. Guys, any closing thoughts?
Man, I was
Other than just say, see ya.
Yeah, we'll dig into this later for sure. See ya.
Later.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.